On May 9th, the world was stunned by the solemn parade of the military forces marching through Moscow's Red Square, commemorating the Victory Day over fascism. Amid this grand event, a young leader stood out among international dignitaries, Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso. Representing a once colonized and marginalized African nation, Traoré was hailed as a hero and warmly welcomed by President Vladimir Putin. As the interim president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré appeared at the 85th Victory Day military parade in Moscow as a guest of honor. But what truly drew attention was his arrival. He was transported on a wide-body Ilyushin I-96 jet, escorted by 74 stealth Su-57 fighter jets, a military protocol rarely granted, reserved only for strategic allies. Upon his return to Burkina Faso, Traoré flew aboard an Ilyushin I-80, known as the Doomsday plane, capable of operating in nuclear warfare conditions thanks to its radiation-resistant armor. He was accompanied by 7 Su-57 fighters in an unprecedented escort formation for a sub-Saharan African leader. News outlets in the AIS alliance nations, including Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, immediately reported and celebrated the event as a historic moment.
To many West Africans, this symbolized a new era, Africa breaking free from the shadows of Western influence. So why was this young leader received so warmly by Putin? Notably, Traoré's visit to Moscow came just days after surviving an attempted coup, allegedly backed by Western powers aiming to remove him. According to AP News, the coup was foiled on May 1st with direct assistance from Russia. Traoré did what few African leaders dared. He expelled French troops, terminated several military agreements with the West, cut ties with financial institutions like the IMF and World Bank, and declared war on a new form of colonialism disguised as aid and development. To his supporters, Traoré is a revolutionary symbol, the embodiment of a rising Africa. But to the West, he is a dangerous figure who must be eliminated. Historically, Burkina Faso has held deep admiration for Vietnam, a small nation that defeated colonial and imperial powers to gain independence. This admiration isn't just rhetoric, it's reflected in symbols and policy. One clear example is the national flag of Burkina Faso, a red and green banner with a central yellow star. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, this flag emerged from the August 4, 1983 revolution led by Captain Thomas Sankara. A year into his rule, Sankara renamed the country from the French colonial Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, meaning the land of upright people, a combination of local Mosi and Diola languages. He also changed the national flag, anthem, and motto. The red-green flag with a yellow star is believed to be inspired by the flag of the National Liberation Front of South Vietnam, a symbol of resistance against American imperialism, revered by many developing nations. The red stands for uncompromising revolution, the green for sacrifice and hope, and the yellow for independence and the wealth of mineral resources. Sankara was assassinated in 1987 during a bloody coup involving French interests, yet the flag, symbolizing the dream of independence and the Vietnamese spirit, remains deeply embedded in Burkina Faso's political identity and quest for autonomy.
During Compaoré's rule, Burkina Faso welcomed Western corporations, renewed IMF agreements, privatized industries, and allowed the French military to return under the guise of anti-terrorism. Since 2013, France officially deployed troops in the Sahel, including Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Mauritania, and Chad, under Operation Barkhane, at one point stationing 5,100 soldiers in the region. However, rather than peace, violence in Burkina Faso skyrocketed, especially between 2017 and 2020, with attacks on civilians increasing fivefold. Locals did not view the French military as peacekeepers, but as symbols of colonial reoccupation, imposing, intervening, and exploiting. Beneath the facade of independence, many African nations still bore the weight of foreign influence. Power no longer rested with the people, but with nods from Paris or Washington, former imperial hubs. Resources like gold became tools for multinational exploitation. Local industries collapsed under the shadow of IMF-led privatization, a new form of colonialism without guns or tanks, just contracts, advisors, and handshakes in the dark. Burkina Faso became a textbook case of a quasi-sovereign state. The national flag waved above the presidential palace, but politics were manipulated by foreign embassies. Since gaining independence in 1960, the country has endured 9 successful coups and countless failed attempts, a cycle of power grabs, betrayals, and collapses. In that context, young officer Ibrahim Traoré chose a different path, staying in his homeland and refusing to remain silent. Amid bloody battlefields, he saw the harsh truth. The West-led war on terror wasn't purely humanitarian. It maintained control. French military bases dotted the nation, but none protected villages ravaged by insurgents.
Despite IMF aid pouring in, frontline soldiers lacked food and ammunition, and civilians lived in fear. To Traoré, the enemy was neo-colonialism masked as aid and stability. In September 2022, at age 34, he overthrew Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba in a swift coup. He expelled French forces, cut IMF aid, and aligned closely with Russia, praising it as a partner in a new liberation struggle. The West reacted immediately. The U.S. cut military aid. Western media labeled him Russia's puppet. Yet these accusations couldn't conceal a deeper truth. The West had betrayed the trust of a whole generation of Africans. At that moment, Russia stepped in as a listening ally. Since 2018, Wagner forces had supported local troops against insurgents. By 2023, Burkina Faso became a key node in Russia's African strategy. Following an assassination attempt in April 2025, Traoré's government signed a security pact with Russia, not just for his safety, but to build independent defense capabilities. The story of Burkina Faso echoes Vietnam's, a small, oppressed nation rising up, overthrowing foreign rule, and forging a self-reliant ideology. Traoré's bold actions reflect a timeless truth. Nothing is more precious than independence and freedom, as President Ho Chi Minh once declared. While we can't say for certain that Traoré is directly inspired by Vietnam, Burkina Faso is clearly following a long-standing historical current, that of oppressed peoples reclaiming their destiny. And that current is what truly worries the powers that once saw Africa as untouchable territory. Now the image of President Ibrahim Traoré walking beside President Vladimir Putin during the victory parade on May 9, 2025, is more than a diplomatic ritual. It is a symbol of a changing world, where defiant nations, once labeled as rebellious, are those brave enough to resist imposed orders and earn the trust of their people as beacons of freedom. From these bold steps, the African people find hope. Hope for a future no longer dictated by foreign powers, but defined by pride and national strength.